The government paid you?
Of course they pay. Whether it's germ warfare, the bomb, chemical warfare, there's plenty of money. Special agencies. I know. They pay. They pay a lot better than they do in private research.
For raising fish.
No. It's a matter of genetics. Radiation, selective breeding. They called it Operation Razor Teeth.
Welcome to the Cinematic Flashback Podcast. Get ready to hop into the Wayback Machine as we journey through the wild, bold, and unforgettable films of the 1970s. Each episode, we break down a classic movie or a forgotten gem, seeing how it performed then and now, and wrapping things up by asking, did it groove through the decades or did it lose its beat? I am your host, Chuck Bryan, and today we are reviewing Joe Dante's 1978 film Piranha, starring Bradford Dillman, Heather Menzies, and Dick Miller. This is our second and final stop in our Jawsploitation month, where we are looking at two films that are swimming in the frenzy that Jaws left in its wake. Joining me for this adventure again is Matt Sargent, who graciously agreed to spend 90 minutes with a school of genetically engineered killer fish. Matt, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well. I'm just unbuckling from the Wayback Machine here and went for a ride to see this film. I'm just back from Canada where I did some fishing, so probably wasn't the best film in the world to watch before we went up there to all that fresh water. And I have my daughter's wedding upcoming in September, so
really,
we have full schedules, as you probably know, Chuck, because you're trying to schedule all around my personal life, and I apologize for that.
Well, you know what? Last year, there were some times where I said, Matt is off somewhere, but, I think our best episodes are where we're here together, so I am going to do my darndest to make sure you're sitting right beside me here in the Wayback Machine.
Well, I appreciate it. I really do. You put in a lot of work this year laying out our schedule and putting together these sort of themed months, which has been a lot of fun. Like you said, we saw Orca before, and that actually is a pretty decent episode. We had fun with that one.
Yeah.
It really is a good one to watch before we watch Piranha, because in a lot of ways it couldn't be more different, right?
When I set out Jawsploitation, the reason why I did this was because I honestly thought that we were going to get two B-style movies, right? Orca really surprised me because it may not have been the best film, but you know what? They stood up to plate, they took a swing at the ball, and they were going for the fences. Piranha, on the other hand, is exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I have been waiting to see this film again. To be honest, the reason is because it's a New World Picture. Growing up, watching these movies, I would see the New World Picture logo. I had no idea that this was Roger Corman's film studio. If you look at the logo animation that they did at the very beginning, that was all hand-drawn by Joe Dante. It eventually became something much bigger. Do you mind if I once again plug his book?
Oh, go for it.
How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime. If you don't have this on your reading list, I highly recommend putting it on there. It's a good read. It's a fun read. You're going to learn a lot about the industry of Hollywood. You're also going to come across maybe some movies that you might want to see of Roger Corman's. I want to recommend his movies from the 1960s called The Intruder with none other than William Shatner. It's a low-budget movie, but it is right there making a big statement about racial integration in the South, and it's not done tongue-in-cheek like Piranha was. It's a very, very good movie, and I have to say that it may be one of my favorite William Shatner roles that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's funny. I have not read the book yet, but it is on my list, and I'm wondering if I can get it as an audiobook, because I typically am able to read a lot more books via audiobook.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I will need to check that out. If not, if you ever want to borrow mine, I am more than happy to loan it out to you, because
do you have the actual paper book?
I I actually have the hardback.
Oh my goodness. It's not even on your Kindle.
No, it's right here in my hand. And in fact, it was Dee Graves from the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast who said, Chuck, you need to read this book. It's one of the best ones that I've read. When Dee gives me a book recommendation, it's one I can usually take to the bank. So this was definitely a good one. Well, Matt, who is talking to us this week?
This was posted on our Facebook page from listener and friend of the show, James Kirk, for our Sting episode back in May. Quote, I enjoyed this episode on what is, in many ways, a spiritual sequel to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but was astonished to learn that Chuck has never seen Butch. It's my all-time number one favorite movie and a must-see for any fan of 20th century cinema. Where do I send the 4K disc? Many thanks to James. I am sure Chuck will reach out with an address. Folks, we are not above receiving gifts and gratuities in order to get your comments read on the air here on our podcast. So keep them coming. I mean, the comments, not necessarily the gifts, but we'll take the gifts.
Matt, this is one of my rather flagrant cinema sins that you pointed out to me when we made that recording. So as soon as I receive this 4K disc from James, I will pop it in and have a watch. Maybe I should do one of those reaction videos like the first time where I just have the camera watching me making comments and watching the movie. Do you think anybody would be interested in that?
I don't know. We should do it together and do it. What is it? Mystery Science Theater 2000 style with just the silhouettes of our heads in front of the screen. My dad, oh my gosh, my dad loved that show so much. He used to watch it and just bellow with laughter at the robot. Oh my God, he loved it. He loved it so much.
That actually makes me glad. Your dad would have been happy to know that right now they are producing 4 more with the original actors who played the robots and
oh my gosh,
the guy who played Mike, who was the second host of that show. So your dad would really have liked that. He
would have, and I'm sorry that he's not around anymore to see it because he just loved that. We used to sit there and he had this giant laugh, which I've described before, especially when we went to see Young Frankenstein, and he would just bellow with laughter about it. And it's one of my more fond memories of my dad. He just loved to laugh. So. He also was really famous for telling shaggy dog stories. If our listeners know what a shaggy dog story is, it's like a dad joke, but it goes on forever. But it ends like a dad joke, with a goofy whatever. And it's one of those ones that he would start telling the story like it was a real live story, like it happened to him. Mm-hmm. And by the end, you're like, really? Really? A dentist? A priest and a rabbi? Why were you in a bar, Dad? Anyway, I have a question for you, Chuck.
What you got?
We know why this movie happened because we're in Jawsploitation month, because obviously everything that happened. But how did this movie really happen? What's the inside scoop?
Well, every once in a while, we cover a movie where the story behind the camera is just as interesting as the one on the screen. And I will say the story of how Jaws became the movie that it is incredibly fascinating. I'll recommend that you read Carl Gottlieb's The Jaws Log, which was released at the same time the movie was, and it is a diary of the production of the movies with lots of behind-the-scenes stories. I also think Piranha might be one of those movies as well, because just to set the scene, after Jaws became what is arguably the biggest movie up to that point in history, every studio wanted its own killer animal movie, and it didn't matter what kind of animal. It could be sharks, it could be bears, it could be alligators, heck, it could even be a swarm of killer bees. If it could eat or kill people, somebody was going to make a movie about it.
Everybody wanted the next Jaws.
Exactly. And Roger Corman wasn't going to let that opportunity pass. Now, when somebody says Roger Corman, what usually comes to mind?
Low budget, drive-in movies, what we would call B movies, kind of not what we would call now blockbusters, I guess. That really wasn't coined by then, was it?
By the time this movie, sure, but yes, you're hitting all of the telltales of a Roger Corman film. He would shoot a movie one week, he would edit it the next, and by the third week, he's already releasing the film. In fact, sometimes as he's filming one movie at a location, he is also filming a second movie at the same time. He doesn't know what it's going to be, but he's getting enough footage, and then he would come up with the idea of a movie poster, and then he would build a movie around the movie poster. That's just the kind of work that Roger Corman would do. But after reading about Piranha, about this movie, I am becoming convinced that his real gift was finding talented people before anyone else realized just how good they were. He'd give them a chance, hand them a tiny budget, and just let them go and make a movie. And Piranha might be one of the best examples of that, because the director was none other than Joe Dante, but not the Joe Dante who had already made The Howling or Gremlins or The Burbs or Inner Space. This was the Joe Dante who was mostly cutting trailers for New World and had just finished co-directing the movie Hollywood Boulevard along with Alan Arkush in another 1976 film for Roger Corman. Do you recognize any of those films of Joe Dante?
I'll be honest with you, I do not.
Not even Gremlins.
Not even Gremlins. No, I didn't. I know Gremlins. I did not realize it was a Roger Corman or Joe Dante film.
Yeah, Gremlins was directed by Joe Dante. So Joe Dante is not a name that you're familiar with, but I was very familiar with him. In fact, there was a movie that was based on the old Twilight Zone series, and it was comprised of 4 segments directed by 4 different directors. One of them had a very horrible ending in real life, which resulted in people dying. But that wasn't Joe Dante's segment. He had the 3rd segment called It's a Good Life, about this little boy who has unlimited godlike powers. It was really, really good and a bit creepy. Now, here's another part of this story that I found interesting. Roger Corman had already bought the screenplay for Piranha from overseas. The problem was, it just didn't work. So he hired a novelist, not a screenplay writer, a novelist named John Sayles with no movie credits and paid him the sum of $10,000.
That's it? Just 10,000?
Just 10 grand.
That's crazy.
I read that Sayles wrote movies like Piranha, The Howling, and Alligator so that he could afford to make the independent films that he really wanted to direct. A few years later, he'd become one of the most respected writers and directors in independent cinema, with films like Matawan, 8 Men Out, about I believe it was about the Black Sox, and Lone Star, earning 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Original Screenplay. So when you're watching Piranha, you're actually watching the very first produced screenplay by one of America's greatest independent filmmakers.
I knew I recognized his name, so it seems reasonable that it was something he wrote early in his career.
Not only early in terms of screenwriting, it was his first.
Wow.
Sayles could have just written another film about killer fish, but he also came up with this other idea that piranhas were part of a secret military project developed during the Vietnam War. So once again, the shadow of Vietnam is overlooming a lot of films, and Piranha is no exception. This is par for the course of a Roger Corman film. Even in his other exploitation movies, he'd often sneak in a little social commentary.
Yeah, but it makes some sense. I mean, given the time, 1978, you're post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, it makes some sense that that's sort of what was in the zeitgeist at the time.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? Corman wasn't done finding talent. I have another name for you, and I'm going to guess you haven't heard of Rob Bottin either.
No, I have not.
So when you talk about makeup effects artist, the conversations usually starts with a guy by the name of Rick Baker. Rick Baker was brought in to do the makeup effects for the 1976 remake of King Kong. He also went on to work with John Landis in American Werewolf in London. The next name that you're going to talk about is a guy by the name of Tom Savini. He did the makeup effects for Friday the 13th, but maybe a little closer to some stuff you and I are going to be talking about in the next few months. He did the makeup for Dawn of the Dead. Finally, you're going to talk about Rob Bottin, because a few years later, he had become one of the biggest names in the business with his work on the John Carpenter film The Thing. He also did work on RoboCop, Legend, and Total Recall. Here's the thing. At this time of this movie, Rob Bottin was just 17 years old.
You're kidding. 17.
No.
That's crazy.
While you and I were trying to graduate high school, Bottin was already creating makeup effects for a feature film. And incidentally, at the climax of this film, one of his works of himself was actually attacked by the piranhas and comes floating up at the end. Pretty funny stuff.
That's funny. That is good.
So I stumbled across one more name, and this is why you stick around and you read 70s credits. Because you remember that little weird stop-motion mutant creature in Dr. Holt's laboratory?
Yeah, I wondered if that was ever going to come back to visit us in any way.
It was supposed to. It was supposed to. But that was the work of Phil Tippett, who was an animator working with George Lucas at Industrial Light and Magic. Do you remember the holographic chess scene in Star Wars?
Classic, yes.
How about those Imperial walkers in Empire Strikes Back?
Fantastic. So imaginative.
That was Phil Tippett's work. And if you look closely, he even has a tiny cameo in Piranha as that unfortunate diver.
Everybody was unfortunate. How do you narrow it down?
Oh, but you know what, Matt? What really stuck with me?
That Roger Corman was assembling the A-team?
Exactly. Sure, he was making his version of Jaws, but unknowingly, he was giving Joe Dante his shot, John Sayles his first screenplay, Rob Bottin one of his first major jobs, and Phil Tippett an early chance to show what he could do.
Maybe Roger Corman's true gift was being able to see the talent in people before they themselves or anybody else saw it.
Piranha might be one of the best examples of just that.
Yeah.
And that is how this film happened.
That is pretty darn cool. It does bring in a new light. I did in watching the movies. I enjoyed the acting of several of the actors, and some of the special effects were they were hilarious. They would have been great in a drive-in movie. So that's cool to hear some of that backstory, and also to hear these guys go off. You know, Piranha wasn't the anchor of their career. It was the launch point. You know,
Can I tell you something about Piranha 2?
As long as it's not, we're reviewing it.
Like, I've done this to you once. You're not going to fall for it again. Piranha 2 was directed by James Cameron, who infamously got fired from the movie.
He's probably trying to make it too good. That wasn't in the budget.
Talent was not in that budget. I don't know if that was a Corman New World flick or not. It seems like they sold off the rights maybe. But yeah, we are about ready to dive into the production details of Piranha, but we need to step away for a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin. It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin.
What if there was something in the water? Something small. Something deadly. Something you couldn't see until it was too late. What if you went swimming one day and discovered piranha? They're here, and they're hungry. Piranha, rated R.
Welcome back. Matt, we've talked about Joe Dante, Roger Corman, and John Sayles. So let's take a look at some of the other people behind the scenes. The producer was John Davison. After Piranha, he'd go on to produce films like Airplane, RoboCop, RoboCop 2, and Starship Troopers. One of the editors was Mark Goldblatt. He got his start at New World Pictures, where he met Roger Corman's assistant, Gail Ann Hurd. She later introduced him to James Cameron, and Goldblatt would go on to edit films like The Terminator, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, True Lies, and dozens of other action movies. The score was composed by Dino Donaggio, who had already written the music for Don't Look Now and Carrie. In true Roger Corman fashion, Donaggio met with the filmmakers. They spotted the movie, which means they looked at the movie to see where they wanted to put music in. He returned to Italy, wrote and recorded the entire score there, then shipped the tapes back to California. Whatever arrived on that score, they used. The budget for Piranha is reported differently depending on the source. And I'm talking about, you can have two people who worked on this film and they reported the amount differently. And when you look at this on Wikipedia or other sources, they're usually giving you a range. But everyone agrees that it fell somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million to make. Corman wanted to spend less than that until United Artists stepped in with enough money to secure international distribution. And the story goes, Corman took some of that, made another movie called Avalanche.
So he took a little money from one movie to do another one.
That's classic Corman.
He's keeping it close to the vest on how much they're spending because that helps him control costs. It's like, well, if you have all that money, why aren't you spending more money for the music?
This is one of the reasons why Corman never wanted to take New World public. As long as he controlled everything, he could make these movies for whatever he wanted to. He could make whatever he thought would make money. He actually had a pretty good nose for it. Piranha earned roughly $6 million in domestic film rentals and another $14 million from the international market, making it New World's most profitable film up to that point.
That is a shocker.
Here's what won't shock you. Reviews were actually kind of scarce because at the time, there was a newspaper strike. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, let's just say they were not particularly impressed with the film. But here's an odd pairing on Rotten Tomatoes. Currently, it has a 72% on the tomato meter, which is what the critics think. And it has a lower rating of 53% with the audience rating. Our last several films that we've been reviewing, it's always reversed. I thought it was kind of interesting that the audience liked it less than those who are critiquing the film. Do you know who did like it? Spielberg has reportedly called Piranha the best of the Jaws knockoffs. And that's a quote that's been following the movie for nearly 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exactly talking about a high bar here. It's like,
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
That's cool, though, that he liked it.
Yeah. Well, finally, one statistic that still amazes me. Production was scheduled to begin in February of 1978. So they were filming during March. So all those water scenes, those people were cold in the water, but they all were smiling. It was filmed down in Texas, so that definitely helped quite a bit. But Piranha was in theaters that August. So it was signed and sealed and delivered all in 1978. That's how fast he turned around that entire movie in about 5 months. Consider shortcuts that they had to take with the effects. That kind of starts to play into why some of those effects look the way that they do.
Well, I think it's pretty remarkable you get a movie out in that amount of time. You know, they'll be shooting a movie and we're like, oh, we hope to see it in, 2029. Looking forward to it. Hope I'm still alive.
Here's something that I learned while listening to the commentaries. Have you ever heard of a Q score before?
I have not.
Studios use something called a Q score to find out which actors audiences are going to know and actually like. So when they were casting this film, they were also thinking about this film playing on TV. And so they were looking at actors who would be familiar to people who would watch television. So if you can't get Redford or Newman, you can look for other actors that the audience would recognize. And Dante was well aware of this when Piranha was cast. Who do we have in this film?
Leading the cast is Bradford Dillman, and he plays Paul Grogan. I actually remembered his face in this movie, and I was like, I know that face. I didn't know his name, but I was like, this guy is familiar. He's been around a long time.
Well, his Q score was high enough for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have definitely recognized him. I couldn't if you said, hey, what else was this guy in? I might have guessed
The Love Boat?
No, Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
I think I remember him from that. The Love Boat's always a weird one because so many actors and actresses went through the Love Boat. It's usually on, though, the epigee.
We need to keep a running tally. Well, appearing with Bradford Dillman was Heather Menzies as Maggie McEwen. She may best be remembered for The Sound of Music, but by the 70s, she was another recognizable face that fit perfectly into Roger Corman's cast.
I really liked her in this film. I thought she was funny, sort of goofy, sort of skilled person, detective. She's like a detective, sort of. So yeah. I enjoyed it. I thought she did a great job.
She was great. She was great in this.
Yeah. So next up is Kevin McCarthy as Dr. Robert Hoke. Yeah,
most audiences knew him already from the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where he gave one of the most memorable performances in 1950s science fiction. Did you see Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
I have to say, I'm sure I have, but I cannot remember it. I remember it. If I do remember it, it's really disturbing.
Oh, yeah. It's all about these aliens. They create pod people.
Yeah.
And it was remade in 79, I think. And McCarthy makes a quick appearance in the film as well, kind of his character like saying the same things. Yeah, at the end of the original one. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Hey, guess what?
What?
We have Keenan Wynn as Jack. We just talked about him in Orca.
That's right. They did the standard killer whale jump. That's funny that he's in 2 Jawsploitation movies. That's funny. Yes.
Barbara Steele is another Roger Corman regular, and she plays Dr. Mengers. She was in the movie Black Sunday, not the one with the blimp.
Yeah, okay.
But an older one from the 60s, and she went on to play classics like The Pit and the Pendulum, which at one point Corman was making Edgar Allan Poe films, and Pit and the Pendulum was one of them. So casting her was just another wink from Joe Dante about the horror movies that he grew up loving.
Well, I got another one for you. Dick Miller.
The Dick Miller.
And I will have to admit to you, Chuck, I thought Dick Miller played both Buck Gardner and the Mayor Vaughn of Jaws. I thought they were the same guy. That's how on the nose this guy portrayed this used car salesman type person. I thought they were the same guy.
Oh, if you watch enough Roger Corman or Roger Corman adjacent films, you're going to see Dick Miller, because Miller started off as a writer for him and then became one of his most used actors in all of his films.
I wonder if Roger Corman really work at relationships with these actors because he could really count on them. Maybe that was part of his secret.
Oh, yeah. There's one of the things that Corman did, because when he started directing films, he didn't start off as a director, but when he got his first chance to direct a film, he realized he needed to understand how to work with actors better. And he took, I cannot remember the name of the actor who he took a course with, who he had a school in New York, and actors would come to him all the time. And so Corman took that class, and he had a classmate in there by the name of Jack Nicholson. And Jack Nicholson and Roger Corman became great friends. They worked a lot together. Corman gave Nicholson his first chance to direct films, and that's really where Nicholson hops off at.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it really tells a little bit of the story about Roger Corman and how he had these same actors time and time again. Because if you were a jerk, if you weren't treated fairly, you wouldn't be in their movie again, Oh,
yeah.
And yeah, they're in small roles, and it's certainly a working actor wants to work, but hey.
Mm-hmm. One last name. I know I said Jack Nicholson. Do you remember when we did Chinatown?
Mm-hmm.
The screenplay for Chinatown is widely regarded and is taught as one of the perfect screenplays that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Towne worked for Roger Corman as well.
Huh.
All roads in 70s cinema seems to run through Corman. It's just unbelievable.
That's funny.
We have some honorable mentions here. Belinda Balaski plays Betsy. She is a regular in Joe Dante films such as The Howling and Gremlins. Melody Thomas Scott plays Laura, and she went on to fame in the CBS daytime soap opera The Young and the Restless. And Paul Bartel played camp counselor Dumont, who is one of the highlights for me. He's hilarious. He was the director of one of Corman's films called Death Race 2000, and he also directed Eating Raoul.
Now, I have heard of Eating Raoul, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it either. Matt, I want you to reach up on the shelf, flip that case around, and tell us what the back of the box was promising the audiences.
All right. Well, I'll do the best I can, but I can't really scare you like the picture on the front of the box. I can turn it over. I can just imagine myself taking it down off the shelf. It's been rented hundreds, if not thousands of times. It's well worn. The edges are scuffed. People have played it over and over again. I'm sure when we slip the tape in the player, there'll be a little bit of snow and maybe a little striping because it's been played and rewound so many times.
And paused.
And just by peeling up the Please Be Kind rewind sticker, I can read the back of the box. And here it is. While searching for missing teenagers, novice skip tracer Maggie McEwen and one of the locals, a town boozer named Paul Grogan, stumble upon a top-secret Army laboratory conducting genetic research on piranha for the sole purpose of biological warfare. When they accidentally release them from the compound, the deadly school of eating machines head downstream and devour everything and everyone in their path. Can Maggie and Paul stop the ravenous swarm before it reaches a crowded children's summer camp?
Oh man, where is my video card? I am renting this movie tonight. Pull it down. Bring it over here.
Hopefully it's been rewound.
I hope so. I hope so.
This seems like a good time to get out of the water. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into our thoughts on Piranha.
It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin.
Hey, this is Matt.
And I'm Dirk.
We're just out here riding our bikes, circling the cul-de-sac, talking about the movies, music, and TV shows that we all love and remember, but just as easily could have fallen by the wayside and been forgotten.
These are the tales of creative chaos, last-minute miracles, and lightning strikes no one saw coming. So settle in, because every legend has a backstory, and sometimes the best ones start by mistake. This is where we talk about and discuss
The Accidental Legends.
It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin.
Is he still out there?
Yep.
Then you'll have to distract him
Why?
so I can get away.
So you can get away. What about me?
All right, suit yourself, but first you're gonna have to distract him.
How?
Well, how would I know? But just get him with his back to the open in there. You know, come on to him.
Hi. Nice night, huh? Listen, are you gay?
What?
Oh, well, I was just reading this article in this magazine, and
What did you ask me before?
look! Up in the sky! It's Superman!
Welcome back. From here on out, we're going to be talking about our personal thoughts on Piranha. So if you haven't seen it yet, consider this your spoiler warning. We may tell you how it ends inadvertently while talking about what we liked and didn't like.
Or purposefully.
Or purposely. As of this recording, you can watch Piranha for free on Tubi and Pluto TV. It's also available for rent or purchase through the usual digital services.
Also, I have to recommend the Blu-ray because it has two really good commentaries. One is with Joe Dante and producer John Davison, and they share their behind the scenes memories about making of this film. And in fact, if I know any bits of trivia on how they made the film, it comes from this particular commentary. And the second is also good because it is an interview with Roger Corman. The movie plays on in the background, but they never talk about the movie. They just talk about his whole career. And it is very, very similar to a lot of the stories that you'll read inside his book. So both of them are really, really good.
All right, so you might have to hook me up with that disc or a similar disc in the future if you have access to it.
Absolutely.
I do have a DVD player here that absolutely never gets used except for to provide the sound for my TV.
Well, one of the stories, as we said earlier, that has followed Piranha around for decades is that Steven Spielberg called it one of the best of the Jaws ripoffs. What do you think he was seeing in this movie?
I think he was seeing kind of the justification of, a danger coming down and threatening children in the water, and that threat was them being eaten or basically turned into what looks like a giant blender had taken them apart. I think there's that tension of there's somebody in the water. Are the piranha's going to get them? Is the shark going to get them? It's just that was really classic in Jaws. Like when it's okay, they're just on the boat in the pond. Then a kid starts yelling that the shark is going into the pond. Same sort of vibe, in my opinion, on that sort of thing. When it finally gets to the point where the children are being threatened, it takes a while to get there, I will have to say.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's that scene where the children are in the inner tube.
Yes.
For Spielberg, I have to imagine that there were things in the Alex Kintner scene of the movie that was filmed, but he wasn't able to use. Like, for example, at one point, the shark was supposed to actually come out of the water and grab Kintner, and that was all filmed. It's just that they couldn't make it look good enough because of the shark at the time. Now, you take Joe Dante, when it gets to the scene at the camp where the piranha are coming down, I think he just took all of his chips and he said, okay, here we go. I'm doubling down on what Spielberg did, and I'm going to put all of these children here inside and put them in complete danger, right?
Yeah.
Which may have been offensive in some degrees, that you're putting children in danger like that. But
it's a
at the same
drive-in
time,
movie, for God's sakes.
I know, that's what people were paying to come in and see.
I will say, though, this is the takeaway.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before. In Jaws, inadvertently, they did not show the shark very often.
Sure.
It's very, very quick shots of the shark. You never really got a clear shot till the very end of the shark. And it was for technical reasons. It was for other reasons. But what it really was in the movie, it builds up this, in your imagination, they are far worse than when you actually get the view of the shark. I mean, the shark's pretty bad in Jaws when you see it, the doll's eyes, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But they show these piranhas pretty early, and they're just not that scary when you see them because they're clearly plastic fish tied to someone and the person's then shaking them.
Yep.
And then they're putting a bunch of movie blood in the water.
Karo syrup and food coloring.
Who knows? It was just horrible. Yeah. But the funny part is it's like they're clearly plastic fish.
Yeah. Technically rubber.
Like they didn't even have real fish anywhere. Like they didn't even go to a place that had piranhas and put some chicken in it and film them and enlarge them and maybe slow down the motion or something. They didn't do any of that. So to me, I think they would have been better to not show them almost the entire time. It would have been more horrifying.
In fact, they were rubber fish that they had like the old puppeteer stick that they would, have to trigger at the back so that it would flick the tail and articulate the jaws.
Yeah.
And of course, then they would have prosthetic stumps or legs or arms or whatever that would just pull apart in the water. I said that Mark Goldblack was one of the editors. The other editor was, of course, Joe Dante. And the way that he was able to make the scenes very intense with the fish, and also one of the reasons why you don't get to see him quite as good as you would like to is because he keeps doing these really, really fast cuts.
Yeah.
And there are sometimes, though, where there's something where it looks like they maybe had a picture and they kind of animated it swimming towards the screen or jumping out of the water onto the camp counselor Dumont. Some of those look cheesy, or if they were swimming from left to right, as a school, that was kind of cheesy. But hey, listen, do you know what other movie was out in 1978 and opened up right before this movie?
No. What?
Jaws 2. There were some strange similarities between Jaws 2 and Piranha. For example, in Jaws 2, children and teenagers are the victims who are in danger of being eaten. Jaws 2 also features a water skier who unfortunately is eaten. It also features a boat that explodes due to the improper handling of gasoline and flame. And it also has divers that are attacked inside the water. Now, I don't know if somehow John Sayles knew that this was happening and he wrote these into it. In fact, Universal tried to sue New World to not release that film at that time just due to the similarities.
I think it's probably more due to low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
It worked with Jaws 1. The original Jaws, that putting kids in danger, and anytime you're on water, you're going to see water skiers because it films real well.
Yep.
It's action, and again, let's go back to seeing it at the drive-in, right? It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect drive-in movie.
Oh, I agree with you so much. Well, before you sat down to watch it and we were talking about it, did you have any expectations more than a drive-in film? And at the end, were the expectations more or less met?
Yeah, I had a pretty low opinion starting, which people might have already gotten that. I did not think it would amount to much, and I was pleasantly surprised that it absolutely met my expectations.
And how right you were. Yeah.
Now, I felt so smart. No, actually, the part I did not expect is the comedy, because I did laugh out loud quite a few times. Sometimes at points where it's supposed to be funny and some points where maybe it wasn't supposed to be funny. But again, when I was young in high school, drive-in movies were really going the way of the dodo. There was like 2 in my area, and then there was just 1. Before, when I was young, we used to go all the time. We would all pile into the car, my brother and sisters and everybody, and we'd all pile into the VW bus because they charged by the car. Back then, we'd have like 10 people, and we'd bring lawn chairs because you go set up the lawn chairs down in the lawn chair area, and they had swing sets and the whole bit. But when I was in high school, we used to do the same thing. We would pop 10 tons of popcorn with the newfangled air popper, and we would go, and back then the drinking age was 18, so you could stop and get some refreshing beverages before the movie. And a friend of ours had a pickup truck, and we would park it backwards, and you'd sit in the back of the pickup truck and watch the movie and just have a great time. It's one of my best memories. But this is absolutely would have been a perfect movie for this.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that this would be a great midnight movie.
I have a better idea. There's a thing called a dive-in movie.
Oh, really?
So you basically, I saw this, they show movies at this resort where a bunch of people have boats.
Oh.
You take your boat and you go watch the movie, but everybody gets out and sits on floats in the water.
No.
This be the perfect movie for it.
No. If you hear a little chittering noise and then all of a sudden the bubble machine starts going and all of a sudden red Karo syrup comes
Just think dive-in movie. I think it'd be perfect.
Oh, boy. Was there any one of the characters or the actors that really stood out for you?
I enjoyed the girl who was the detective.
Yeah, the Skip Tracer.
It's the Skip Tracer. She was funny. She was so funny in the whole film.
Yeah.
Even in the parts where it was like, it got dicey because, she's in danger and everything. She's still funny, and I enjoyed her. And I'm glad to know that she was in The Sound of Music before.
I really enjoyed both the 2 leading actors. I thought they had a great rapport.
The one thing I will say about the film that drives me a little bit nuts is that guy is a total drunk, total useless, right? Didn't want to do anything. Yet he has like this sweet daughter.
Oh, yeah.
So that just rang so false, right? They should have just made it his niece
or something.
Something like that. Or the old man who came to visit her, his granddaughter, somebody who mattered but wasn't his kid.
Yeah. I thought the actress who played that little girl, I thought she was
spot
on
she was
the
great.
entire time. I really liked her. was there a particular piranha kill that you found particularly gruesome?
No, not really. I mean, the old man.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The old man getting pulled into the water, the dog barking. I mean, it was frustrating, but he was like, just pull your legs out of the water.
I know.
What's the matter with you?
Oh, that was such a great thing. You know, he's dragged himself up on land where he's died, and then like everything below his kneecap is denuded.
Yeah.
I think Piranha and Jaws have taught us that if you're with a really good-looking young lady and she wants to go swimming, just leave.
Yeah,
let her do her thing. I mean, don't follow her into this water.
At that age, I probably would have had a hard time not following that girl in the water. She was ready to go skinny dipping pretty much at the drop of a hat. So.
When they first got to the military base at night and the young couple goes swimming in the water, they refer to it as a pond, right?
Yeah.
But obviously it's a swimming pool.
Right.
And it looks like it's got all these little cages, which obviously in the light of day turns out to be volleyball nets. And then they have these rusty barrels that they put for set dressing in the back. And then on the ground, they took these barbecue grill lids, painted them orange, and just stacked them around the place to look like ports that would open up that you could go down into the
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
That's actually the funnest part of sometimes, like, I don't know if I remember, if I told you, Chuck, you might remember, but I worked doing the lighting on a play in college.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was on a lighting crew. And I'll be honest with you, one of the funnest things of doing a play is doing the set dressing and then using the lighting to kind of adjust the mood or make the scene change completely. It's super fun. And I can see in a movie, they're like, well, just get a bunch of Weber grills and spray paint the tops. It'll look perfect.
You know, growing up, there was a advertisement of a owl who would say, give a hoot, don't pollute. The way in which they are trying to control the fish is by polluting the river.
Yeah.
Whether it's by the military drops in some kind of chemical or Paul is trying to get some sludge out of an old processing plant. I just thought, what a very 70s thing. We have Vietnam, we have government conspiracies, and now we have pollution where pollution is the answer to the problem.
So, Chuck, if you're good, probably need to step away for a quick break.
It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin. It's a cinematic flashback. Let the show begin.
And welcome back. Matt, I don't know if I have much else to say about Piranha, which means that it's time for the question we ask every episode. Did Piranha groove through the decades or did it lose its beat?
Well, this one is not as nuanced as it might be, but I will say that in watching this film, and I did not mention before that this was a first-time watch for me, so I can't say much about that film, seeing it in the past, but I can relate to the times that it was released in and the fact that I really think it is the perfect drive-in movie. And I think it grooved in that respect back in the old days. I think clearly from the money it made money. $13 million on a $1 million budget is nothing to sneeze at. So that's great. It is entertaining to watch nowadays, especially when you keep that in mind. You keep that the time it came out of and the Jawsploitation part of it. It's entertaining to watch. It's funny in parts. It's not very scary, really. But do I think it grooves now? I will give it half a groove and it bumps out of the groove every now and again and then bumps back in. So if you have a chance to watch it on Tubi or one of those others for free and you have a little spare time, it's funny. If you have a pool and a big screen and projector, it's the perfect dive-in movie to watch because you could literally get up and get some more snacks and you wouldn't miss a thing. So yeah, I think it grooved in the old days mainly because it does not take itself too seriously, which is I appreciate. That contrasts with Orca, which I think took itself a little bit seriously. This one does not do that. So it is what it is, and it's proud of it. And nowadays, it's fun to watch because it's just so goofy. But would I go out of my way or pay a lot of money to see it? I think maybe no. So I have to say it grooved in the old days. And like I said, it grooves now with the occasional skip or bump out of the groove.
Okay. That needle is kind of going,
exactly.
And you have to kind of, you have to hit it to get it to
you
go
got to tape some pennies on it.
There you go. The first time I ever saw this film, like I said, I think earlier, was that it came on HBO and my dad was watching it and he invited me to come in and sit down and watch it. And then I think he told me to never tell my mother that he let me watch it for obvious reasons. So
that's just between me and you, son.
So up until now, my dad and I have had this secret that is now out in the open. I have to say that I unabashedly love Roger Corman movies. They are what they are. And, this Jaws cash-in is absolutely no exception, even if it was 3 years too late. But just look at who made this movie. I mean, Joe Dante, John Davison, Phil Tippett, Rob Bottin, Mark Goldblatt, and John Sayles. This film does not waste time. And that's not surprisingly because it has a small budget and they had to keep moving. And the practical effects, for the most part, are pretty effective. Yes, there are rough edges, but hey, this is a B movie, and I think it adds something to the charm. It's never going to replace Jaws, and it wasn't trying to. And you just said something about Orca taking itself a little bit more serious. When we first started doing the Jawsploitation month, my idea was I was going to see 2 movies that were B movies, and I didn't get that with Orca. I was a little bit disappointed, but I was also kind of surprised that they really made something like that. This film was exactly what it was that I was looking at. And if anyone was to ask me which Jaws knockoff is actually worth watching, this is the one I'm recommending. It's funny, suspenseful, occasionally shocking, and nearly 50 years later, it still is entertaining way to spend 90 minutes. So for me, Piranha absolutely grooved through the decades. Do you have any final thoughts on this, Matt?
Yeah, there's a couple of grandmas out there that have to answer the question, Grandma, how did you spend your teen years acting in a Roger Corman film? Wow, you looked really good back then, huh? Grandma. Oh, no. Chuck, as usual, you really sum up the film in a great way. And it's not that I don't disagree. I just am trying to be real in terms of, 90 minutes. It's entertaining. Like I said, I wouldn't pay money for it, but I totally agree. It's really cool to see what Roger Corman was doing with these debutante stars and actors and screenwriters and directors. And that's really cool. That's one of the funnest parts about doing this podcast is we get to learn kind of those secrets that I would totally be oblivious to in my normal life. So thank you for that.
Well, now that we watched both Orca and Piranha, which one did you enjoy more?
I actually enjoyed parts of Orca because and I think we talked about it in the podcast that the Orca is actually a sympathetic character.
Sure.
Up until the point where he wants to murder everyone. But I would say in terms of enjoying the movies, this one I enjoyed more.
I'm really glad we watched both of them. I had more fun with Piranha, but I think maybe I kind of knew that after I watched Orca. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to like Piranha more. But Orca I hadn't seen, and I was really surprised. I thought Richard Harris was great in it. It took a lot of turns that I wasn't expecting. I was surprised. So I think that about does it for this episode. Join us in 2 weeks as we kick off our Shades of Noir month with Arthur Penn's Night Moves from 1975, starring Gene Hackman. Then we'll wrap up the month with Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, featuring Elliot Gould's take on private detective Philip Marlowe. Together, these 2 films explore how the classic film noir tradition evolved in the 1970s with flawed detectives, morally gray worlds, and mysteries that are about far more than simply solving the case. We'll talk about Gene Hackman, Elliot Gould, Arthur Penn, Robert Altman, and why these two films remain among the finest neo-noirs of the decade.
We want to thank you for taking the time to tune in. If you've seen Piranha, we'd love to hear what you think. Reach out to us on Facebook or leave us a message over at cinematicflashback.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy the podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you left us a rating or a review. In fact, your review just might get read on the air. If you've been enjoying the show, tell your friends and family about what we still proudly believe is the best podcast dedicated exclusively to 1970s cinema. Join us next time as we climb back into the Wayback Machine and head once again to the 1970s for another cinematic adventure. Until then, stay out of the water. And if someone tells you the swimming pool's perfectly safe, you just might want to think twice. We'll see you next time.
Bob, I'm going to have to get back to you on this. We got a situation down here.